And she always told me when I left to sign to go to Tampa, she was like, Mikey, on all the teams you're on, hold on a second. She goes, it seems like they do better when you're a part of them.
We gonna let the band deal with it.
Trying to go right around, Momentum's here.
A-style. Old school. Okay, what's up? Shut up. Okay, what's up? Shut up. Okay, what's up? Shut up. Okay, what's up? Right.
For me, Miami was really a melting pot where I played. You know, I played in Coral Gables, South Miami, and remember, we're talking 35 years ago, Coral Gables, South Miami. It was my T-ball in Little League, I guess before you got to age 10, was at Sunset Elementary. They don't even have a field now, but they used to have 4 fields. And it was a good mix, you know. You had a lot of white kids, you had black kids, you had a lot of Latin kids, so it wasn't strange to have, you know, you were 12 kids on the team, 4, 4, and 4, you know. And I think now you have a lot of travel ball, you have a lot of niche things where the kids play together since they're 6, and I'm not sure that's the best formula, because I remember when I got to Little League, the biggest day was when they sent out the papers of who your coach was, who your teammates were, so you were hoping to be with, you know, your buddies or whatever. So my earliest good memories have a lot to do with my dad, because my brother was 2 years older than me, and I would play up one level. So basically every other year I got to play with my brother, so my dad would coach both of us. He's like, I'm not coaching 2 teams, but I'll coach one. So looking back now as a dad, when I coached my son and all that, I realized how spoiled I was having my dad. You know, my dad was a real good pitcher. He's a guy, he was in the Puerto Rican Hall of Fame from the amateur level. So I didn't understand that I had great batting practice growing up. You know, my dad would take half days, Wednesdays off, and he'd take us to the park, and he had a bucket of 50 balls, and you got 50 straight swings. He goes, my only rule is you can't take the pitch, because basically everything he threw was a strike, you know? So I think, you know, I did that, then basically off of South Miami Middle is where, you know, that Little League went. And then basically when I got to 7th grade, 8th grade, I think you realize you got to play more competitive ball if you want to be good in high school. And that's when I started playing, you know, in the boys club on 32nd and US 1. And that's a whole nother world where I think the competition was a lot more intense. You have guys that, you know, were a lot more focused, and you get into those teenage years where, you know, some kids are really developed. I was not one of them, and you feel like, man, he's only a year older than me, but he looked like he was 10 years old. You know, he's got facial hair, and, you know, he has to shave a couple times a week, and I'm like, dude, I don't even have hair under my armpits. I don't know what's going on here. So that was a good growing experience, but it was great because you had loud parents, loud fans, and the atmosphere was intense. So you got to, I think, grow up quick. And then I think in the summer, I played a little bit of what they call city ball. And we went to Richmond Heights, we went to Perrine, we went to all the different neighborhoods, let's call it. And you learn quick that you either got to punch them in the mouth early to show that you guys aren't going to be intimidated, and you got to do the same. So I thought it was, for me, a great place to play, because you learn how to grow up quick, and you learn how to lose, and you learn how to get beat. And what are you going to do when you get beat? You know, are you going to get back up, or are you just going to, you know, walk away defeated? So I thought Miami provided a great baseball scene for at least for what I needed.
Which team in the Boys and Girls Club? Like, what was your...
I was Avanti, because it was Joe Ariola, the old city manager. He owned an Avanti printing press, and he sponsored us. So we had, you know, Yerba Mate Sola on the back and Avanti on the front, and basically it was whoever would give you the money for the uniforms here. It's not like, I mean, my son plays summer ball, and for the summer it was like $4,000. I'm like, I don't know how some parents do it, because I'm one of 4 kids. We're 3 brothers and my sister. I go, if we had to pay $4,000 a year, I don't know if I would have played summer ball. I don't think my parents could have done it. And I think that is, I think that the money part is a part that kind of shies me away from what a lot of kids can do, because what it does is it makes them choose one sport, because there's not money for more than one sport, and it's expensive. It's a money-making machine, which I don't know if that's the best interest in the kids today getting better.
Sure. I'm so fascinated by you bringing up the Boys and Girls Club, because I'm a Boys and Girls Club kid who played at International. So did my little brother. Like, went through that whole system from 9 until you can't play there anymore.
Right.
And it's high school time. But I think what you said is interesting, that it's like the first place I ever played where you're playing for something, but it's not this expensive travel ball that you got to buy into, but you're also like, it's your first taste into high stakes baseball. And you're a kid, and every year it's like, it matters. The stats are posted on the little. Yeah, well,
I was going to say that. It shows when you're doing good and when you're doing bad.
Yeah.
And then you had the old Cuban guy announcing your name before you went to bat. So now everyone heard your name. And you're like, you don't want to be the guy that strikes out, because then everyone knows Mike Lowell strikes out, So you had to grow up a little bit. When you're 13, it makes you be a little bit more of a man a little quicker. And I think that was good.
When you're 12 years old and you hear the announcer say, you strike out looking, esperando la guagua, in front of like a packed house, you're like, oh, that's terrible. But welcome to baseball.
Yeah.
What changed when you stepped into the Gables, and what did you see that better prepared you to take the next step?
A couple things. I mean, my Columbus experience actually was a good one. Like, all my friends went there, and my parents were that typical Cuban Catholic upbringing. So if you could test and get into Columbus, that's where you went. And it wasn't like now where they have like 3 freshman teams and a JV team. I remember the trial my freshman year. I was playing basketball, and I went over there, and it was 90 guys for 12 spots. So if you got cut, you didn't play baseball anymore, and it was really intimidating. But so it was just freshmen and sophomores, and I enjoyed my freshman. Played summer ball. My sophomore year, I did really well and was on the varsity, and I really wasn't playing much, to be honest with you. I was short, and I don't know if you guys know Huicho Hernandez, very involved with UM. He was a senior. He was great. He was one of the most influential guys for me at that time, taught me everything about second base. Now, second base back then, guys could slide, take you out, so a big thing was turning the double play and getting out of the way. So he was just so good to me, and I felt like I really came into my own. But at that point, in my opinion, Columbus had a lot of politics going on. They were raising money. The school was growing. And so Brother Herb was the coach, and he basically told me, hey, I'm going to send you back down to JV. And I was relieved. I was like, there's no point in spending 3 weeks with a team to get 2 at-bats. So when I get sent down, ironically, Alex Rodriguez is the shortstop. I'm playing second, and all of a sudden, I don't play second anymore. They're moving me to third. They're asking if I could pitch, and I'm like, I'm 15 years old, and I'm like, I don't understand why I play on an all-star travel team in the summer where it's 2 kids from Southridge, 2 kids from South Miami, Coral Park. I mean, it's every high school. This isn't a hand-picked thing. It's the best players. And I can't play on JV? So that's where you don't understand that when you're 15, everything is why. And then, I had a couple friends. Jose Prado was a big name that had left Columbus to go to Gables, and a couple of my buddies did. And my assistant coach in summer ball was the assistant coach at Gables. So he's like, hey, I can guarantee you one thing. He gave me a meeting with the Gables coach. He goes, I'll guarantee you one thing. If you're better than the second baseman, you're going to play. So I was like, all right, I'll take that chance, because it was kind of burning me that I felt like I was better and not playing. And that's a tough pill to swallow when you're 15, 16. You don't understand the ways of the world a little bit. And Gables just became a really great landing spot for me, because I went because of Dan Canterbury, who was a coach there. He was pitched at UM, was a coach, and he was just a guy who ran the thing great. So about the second week at my Gables, they call a meeting, and Canterbury says he took a job as an assistant coach at LSU. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? Just go to the school. And I don't even know the coach. So the assistant coach was Dave Biseglia. No, we didn't know anything about him. He turned out to be fantastic, man. Back then in the fall, you're not allowed to practice as a team with the coach. It was only weights and stuff like that. So we had what he called indoor sessions. And he was a UM guy. He was a Skip Bertman, Ron Frazier guy. And he would just say, okay, Mike, you're the runner on first. There's a runner on third, 1 out. I call a squeeze play. What do you do? So you had to kind of go through, I think I should steal, because if it's a squeeze and he pops it up, that guy at third's dead anyways. If he misses, the rundown's going to be at third. Maybe I can get to third. If the bunt goes down, they're going to either try to get the out at home or at first. I might be at third. So he was really, really a cerebral coach. And he would always tell us, man, by the time the season starts, we'll be prepared to play the New York Yankees. He goes, we'll lose because we're not better, but we'll be prepared enough. And that was, I think, a big mental jump for me, really understanding the game and understanding how important it is to get a runner in from third with less than 2 outs. How important it is to run a guy, get a runner over, bunt defenses and all that. So I think that set me up with a real good foundation at a higher level to understanding baseball, really.
Yeah. How big of a part did that cerebral part of the game you think had an impact in your career?
I'm sure you've talked to guys, like I look at Jeff Conine, his son last night just got a couple hits, and I see him in the stands, and the first thing I text him was, man, you're still jacked. He's jacked. And I was like, I never was like the biggest, strongest. I couldn't run. I knew I always had a good arm and I had a knack to put the ball in play. But I think being such a late bloomer was a blessing, because I didn't feel like physically I could compete with the other kids my age, basically age 15 to 20. I really grow into my frame probably like 21, and that's when I signed and got drafted. So, I tell people, like, I had 12 home runs in college in 3 years. And when I got to pro ball, I was just like, man, I hope I can just be a good hitter. And that's why I tell people I know steroids work, because I gained 12 pounds eating chicken breasts and broccoli and all that and trying to do the right thing. And with 12 pounds that I felt like I gained of muscle in an off season, I felt like a different hitter. Now, someone goes, boom, one cycle and gains, because I saw it. I saw a lot of guys. They came back 35, 40 pounds different in an off season. I said, I can't even imagine how those guys would feel with a bat in their hands. It has to make you feel, first physically, but mentally, how good do you feel? Because, when I grew into my frame, literally, it was the first time I passed 200 pounds. I think I went from 187 to 202. My swing didn't change much. I worked with the Yankee guys because I was in their system, and my home runs went from 8 to 32. And the only reason was because I was hitting the ball 20 feet further. I always hit a lot of doubles, but now you had just a little bit more. And I think that was, a big thing of why mentally, to get an edge and compete with the guys that were my age but better physically, I think you have to try to look for the mental advantage, And then when I caught up physically, I think that kind of helped me one step further.
The question is twofold. First, do any names from that era really stand out to you as, like, remember, like, them? These were the dudes of this. This would have been the legends of Dade in that time and era.
Absolutely. Few names, actually. Raul Ibanez hit a ball off my buddy Juani Alvarez. He was at Sunset. It still hasn't landed. So he might not want to see this, but that ball still hasn't landed. Yeah. And he turned out to be a great big leaguer. Jose Prado was the best high school pitcher I ever saw. It was ass and elbows and 94, and he was like 17 at the time. I still remember his senior year, he wrote a letter to all 30 major league teams, do not draft me in the first round because I want to go to the University of Miami. Like, as a courtesy, don't wait, you're going to waste the pick. And at Westminster, the Caridad brothers, I don't know, that might be dated, they were a little older than me, but it was the first time I was a sophomore in high school. I faced a guy that threw 95, and I swear the ball looked like it was this big. I was like, man, there's no way I can hit this guy. So, but I think growing up, Alex Gonzalez, the shortstop who played for the Blue Jays, not the one that was my teammate. He went to Killian. I played against him. He went to Continental Little League, and then he went over to Flagami later. I think from age 6 to 18, he was the best player in Miami. Like, he was the best player every single year in Miami. He did everything right. So it was cool. It was a lot of guys that were not only real good little leaguers, high schoolers, college guys, some of them drafted, but then they made, big time, big league careers. Shannon Stewart was another one. I didn't meet Shannon till high school, but I was just like, oh my God, I've never seen a guy, and he was supposed to go to Florida State as a safety, on a full ride. So it was cool to see what Miami threw at you, because it was, it was Southridge, it was Gables, it was Westminster, it was Coral Park. It was cool to see that you got a lot of really good players coming from different areas, different backgrounds, and different ways to kind of get to the same point.
So you have really good high school career. I assume you play on all the travel ball teams in the summer, all that. You get drafted out of high school.
I do.
Was it a toss-up, or was it an easy decision?
It was an easy. I wasn't a high pick. I was, I think, 48th round by the White Sox. I felt super honored, because I came from, my junior year. I hit 9th for Gables, and I think I hit 2 doubles and no home runs. So to be drafted out of my senior year was cool.
Area scout liked you.
What? Yeah. Pep, his name was Pepe. He was the White Sox guy. He's still working. He's still doing it. Yeah, it was. And he was someone who said, I'm going to give you way over the value for a 48th rounder. And mind you, my dad was a dentist, so I'm not going to admit that I never struggled growing up. You know, I was upper middle class, 4 kids. We lived a simple life because my parents had that Cuban exile mentality that you always had to save. I mean, my vacation was we went to Sanibel Island for a week every year for 25 years. And I thought it was the greatest vacation in the world. So when you don't know that you don't go skiing and boating and all that, you think you have the greatest life in the world, and which I did. But my dad even told me, if they offer you $100,000, you're signing. And people laugh at that now because a 15th rounder would get, 150, 200. So, because he was saying, you got to understand the value of money. When is someone going to write you a check? Mind you, they never came close. I think they offered me 40 in school, which I thought was a great offer. But coming out of there, I was a Hurricane growing up. All I wanted to do was go to the University of Miami. I mean, I went to Ron Frazier sports camp. I loved the Hurricanes. It wasn't meant to be. There was a guy from Southridge, really good player, Ricardo Gama, who they gave him, he was a second baseman. Then Huicho, who I mentioned before, was basically going to be a junior. So I said, I'm not going to go to Miami. They gave me a partial scholarship and I had some academic money. So it wasn't going to be expensive for my parents, but I'm like, I'm not going to go to UM to be on the bench. Right. Once again, I've always been a believer that there's no point in playing on the best team if you ride the bench. Just to say you're on travel team A and you're the 12th guy, you don't get better watching the game. You got to play. So, and that's where I give Danny Price and FIU all the credit in the world. I came late to the scene. Like in April, they said they were, in like March, they said they were interested in me. And in April, I called them. And I was like, you still have that scholarship on the table? They told my dad. They're like, yep, full ride. I said, well, D1, full ride. I said, am I going to play? And he goes, well, we have a shortstop. We think you could play shortstop. We have a shortstop that's going to be a senior, but I think you're better than him. If you beat him out in the fall, you're going to play. It was kind of like the Gables thing. I said, well, I rather bet on myself than on the politics. So I went to FIU, and honestly, I had a good fall, and I had three real good years at FIU. It was a good decision for me. Playing time is the most important thing in the world. You can't trade that for anything.
From 95 to 98, what about that Yankee system do you think prepared you to be able to, when you eventually get traded to the Marlins, kind of step in right away and be productive?
A few things. Are the answers short, or you like me elaborating?
You can go.
Okay.
Longer's preferred.
Okay. The way I get drafted by the Yankees is kind of messed up. Rudy Santine was a scout, and he said, Mikey, you don't project as a second baseman. Would you be willing to catch? And I said, hell yeah, because catchers didn't need to hit 20 home runs. So the Yankees drafted me in the 20th round as a catcher. I was game. I hadn't caught since 8th grade, but I was like, hey, whatever, because I figured I always hit for good average. I said, man, I feel like I can call a game. If you hit 10, 12 home runs, you can get to the big leagues. So the minor league director of the Yankees, Mark Newman, great guy, says to me, hey, we're going to put you at third base. You're going to start catching bullpens. When we feel you're ready to get in the game, you're going to start catching games. I said, no problem. My first manager in A-ball is Rob Thompson, who's the manager of the Phillies right now. My first manager, great dude. 2 weeks go by, I don't have shin guards or a mask, a mitt, nothing. So I said, Thompson, I go, hey, am I going to catch? And he's like, man, the 3 days when you were in Tampa, which is the headquarters before they ship everyone out after the draft, Mark Newman likes your hands. He wants to keep you at third. And I was like, oh, my God, dude. Third baseman's got to hit home runs. Never been a home run hitter. So I was like, man, I was a little disappointed. So I go to Oneonta, and Oneonta is the worst field known to mankind in the minor leagues. I mean, they drag the field and they end the fence right at third base, and they shake the fence out, and all you get is all the rocks right there. I think I made like 35 errors in like 76 games. It was terrible. I hit 1 home run. So then, if you're staying at third, that's when the next year got a little better. I hit 8, and then that's when, boom, you gain 12, 15 pounds. I made the AA team. Hit 32 home runs. 99 went back, did a full year in AAA. In 97 I went half year AA, half year AAA. 98 I was the whole year in AAA, get called up. My first day in the big leagues is in Boston, Yankees, Red Sox. I'm on the bench. It was Pedro Martinez against Hideki Irabu. And it's like football. It's like Jets Dolphins, man. It's awesome. So Luis Sojo's on the bench, and I turned to Luis, and I got to know him pretty good in spring training. And I go, Luis, is it like this all the time? I mean, I've never played in front of so many fans in my life. He goes, it is when the Yankees play the Red Sox. So that was kind of like my first introduction to the rivalry. The 98 Yankees were so good that my first day there in Fenway Park, they clinched the division with like 20 games left. So literally after the game, I'm in there and everyone's popping champagne and all this. So I drank champagne and a beer before I got in that bat in the big leagues. You know, I'm with the other 6 call-ups. We're just sitting in the corner. We're like, hey, great job, Yankees, you know. So, but the Yankees, that system, what I appreciate about them, and being a Red Sox player, you know, you talk good about the Yankees, they want to murder you. Like, I feel like I was treated just as good as any first rounder from a time standpoint. And I don't think every organization does that. Now, mind you, if I hit 240, your leash is a lot smaller. They'll release you because the investment of the Yankees, I signed for $20,000. Like I tell them, that's a rounding error of hot dogs in the second inning for the Yankees. You know what I mean? Like, so that investment is nothing to them. But once they see that you post up every day and you're starting to put up numbers, I got the same attention, the same number of swings, and they made the time as our first rounder did, and the first rounder the next year. So that's one thing that I give George Steinbrenner all the credit in the world, because when you go to Instructional League, which is kind of like, you know, the top 30 prospects kind of have a 6-week, you know, let's call it camp at the end of the season, the Yankees literally they mapped out what you need to work on. You need to work on hitting the ball the other way better. He pulls the ball good, stay through the ball. Nutrition is a big factor, needs to muscle up. My last day in my locker, I had like 4 98 packs of Metrics. I don't know if you guys remember Metrics, where it tasted like straight portable, a hand blender, and creatine. And George Steinbrenner's philosophy was, I'm going to give you everything you need to get to the big leagues. If you don't get there, it's because you weren't good enough. So that, I thought every team ran that way, and until you see your buddies that are on other organizations going through the minor league system, you realize that the Yankees were really special in that. And then I think the thing that set me up big time was they did media training for the young guys. And it was really eye-opening because, you know, New York's a big scene, but when you're drafted by the Yankees, you're not in New York. You know, I was in Oneonta, I was in Greensboro, North Carolina, Norwich, Connecticut. There's 2 reporters there. But my first spring training was spring training in '98, and Scott Brocious was the guy they signed. And my locker's right next to him. Scott Brocious is the nicest guy in the world. And he starts off like 0 for 9, and I started off like 3 for 7 with a couple doubles. So the media, literally, I'm sitting down and they go, hey, Scott, are you worried about the young guy trying to get your job? And Scott is a veteran, but he's coming off a terrible year offensively with the Oakland A's. He hit like 205. And Scott gives a very political answer. You know, he's like, no, I'm just trying to do my job, help out. Or, thank you, Scott. Hey, Mike, aren't you here to show the veteran that you're better than him? And I'm like, bro, he's right there, dog. And I said, same thing. No, I'm trying to have good at-bats, hopefully open some eyes. The media leaves. And Brocious turns to me. He goes, Mike, remember this. If you're good enough to play in the big leagues and I'm good enough to play in the big leagues, we're both going to play in the big leagues for 2 different teams. So that really kind of opened my eyes. Like, man, that's what a veteran does. He teaches you that don't get caught up with all that media bullshit. You know, you got to really stay true to just doing your job. And I think that helped me get to the point where when I got to the Marlins, to be like, Kevin Ory was there. I'm not going to badmouth Kevin Ory. He was a young guy. I don't know him from anyone else. I got to take care of me, because baseball, I say it's a team game within a very selfish concept, because if the team sucks and you do good, you're going to be the guys they're going to build around. If the team does great and you do bad, they're going to still look for someone else anyway. So you got to take care of yourself first and then go from there.
2 questions, but they're the same question. When did the first aha moment that you feel like you can play in the big leagues as a minor leaguer?
Okay.
And then it sounds like you were talking about when that power came, probably some connection there, but also in the big leagues, is there any moment that stands out where like, yeah, I belong here? Like, I'm going to be...
Yes and yes. In '97, where I really had a great year. I mean, I made the AA team. I basically skipped high A. I was only there for 3 weeks in '96. So I make the AA team, and that was a little bit of a stretch. And I'm hitting like 356. with power and everything. I get called up to AAA, and Andy Fox, who ends up being my teammate with the Marlins, is sent back down. Now, he was on the team in all of '96 when the Yankees win the World Series, so he's a big leaguer. And I'm hitting in the cage with him, and you know how the ball sounds off your back compared to other guys. And I think at that moment I was like, God, man, if this guy can play in the big leagues the whole year, I feel like I hit the ball just as good, if not better than him. I go, I would be really disappointed if I didn't make it to the big leagues. Now, mind you, you don't know if, like, they say, oh, you know, confidence brings ability, but you got to have the ability to have the confidence. Everyone is lying to you. There's not a man alive that walks into a big league clubhouse who's never been there who's confident, knowing they're going to do good. It's impossible. You haven't faced these guys yet. But I just felt like I knew I should be good enough to get there. Now, whether I stayed or not was a different moment. So I think that was the moment where I knew I felt like I was good enough. Where I knew I could stay was the baseball gods align things sometimes, you know. And I think one thing that gets lost when I get to the Marlins is I get traded February 1st. We have our team's physical February 17th. February 19th, I'm on an operating table, you know, diagnosed with cancer. So we can touch on that. But I had 3 weeks of radiation after the surgery and all that, and I was just wiped out. Like, I usually swung a 32-ounce bat. I went to a 31-ounce bat, and I swear they had like the donut on it still. I mean, I really lost a lot of strength. So when I finally joined the Marlins, this is February, I joined the Marlins late May, and I just feel weak. And, you know, you're a little disappointed because this is my first full year. You want to really impress people, and you don't feel like you got, you know, all the bullets in your gun that you usually go to battle with. So we're in Arizona. I don't know the exact date, maybe June, July-ish. And I made a deal with our strength coach, Rick Slate, that any day that I wasn't playing, after batting practice, we have to go hit the weights. Because I got to find a way to get stronger. Because if I pinch hit or something, there'll be 2.5 hours, 3 hours to go by, we'll be all right. So we're in Arizona, and Randy Johnson's on the mound. Now, this is heyday Randy Johnson with the Diamondbacks. Not in the lineup. I wasn't upset I wasn't in the lineup. We finished batting practice, go lift. So my lifting with him was a little more like off-season lifting because we're trying to gain strength, not just maintenance. We lift, come in, I'm sweating. 10 minutes before the game, I get a call from the manager. He says, hey, you're starting. And I'm like, what? Kevin Ory has something messed up in his hand. He's starting. So, you know, the cynic in me is like, bro, did this guy just duck Randy Johnson? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he had something wrong with his hand. So now I just finished lifting. I got to face the unit. I think I flew out the first time. I was kind of happy I made contact. You know, you're looking up at the gun. You're like, 98 slider, 92. Or you're like, oh, my God. And then my third at-bat, I take him deep. They bring in my fourth at-bat. They bring in, I think their setup man, I think it was Greg Olson. I got to hit up the middle. And my last at-bat was against our former closer, Matt Manti, that threw 98 as well. And I think we were down a run. It was in the 9th inning, and I took him deep. And I was like, dude, if I can take Randy Johnson and Matt Manti deep in the same game, I got to be able to stick, you know. And from that day, I really didn't sit. You know, I didn't sit. So I don't know, maybe the baseball gods lined it up for me to face Randy Johnson that day to prove to myself that you kind of belong in the big leagues. I think it was the first time that I kind of called my dad after and was like, I think I feel strong again, you know? And look at this. This is 25 years later. I still get choked up thinking about, you know, the cancer and all that because I was like, God, man, I worked so hard to get here, and it's going to be taken away. So that was my rookie year. Had a lot of ups and downs, but way more ups when you look at, you know, when you look past it. But, you know, as a 24-year-old, 25-year-old, you don't think that way. You know, you think the world's coming to an end.
The first time you get traded,
Yep.
right? Like, that's usually for players, that's like an upending experience. I imagine it was for you, but you're getting traded to come to your hometown club.
Yep.
And so it's interesting because I've talked to a lot of players about playing for the hometown club, and it's a mixed bag.
Yep.
You know, it's a mixed bag. There's some positives, you get to be around family. There's some negatives that you get to be around a lot of people that are, you know, which I'm sure you experience. I'm wondering where you might fall on this, but before that, were you excited when that was what was happening?
Delighted, and I'll tell you why. before 98 playoffs start, I was in AAA now already a year and a half, and I put up good numbers. My agent had a very good relationship with Brian Cashman. He puts us on like a three-way call, actually a call with him, and then he fills me in. And basically, Brian Cashman tells my agent, Seth Levinson, this. He goes, the only way Mike is not the starting third baseman for the Yankees in '99 is if we go to the World Series, we win the World Series, and Scott Brosius wins World Series MVP. Because then I got to re-sign him. The Yankees go, they win, Brosius wins World Series. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was happy because with a call-up, they told me, you're going to get a ring. I wanted the Yankees to win, but I was like, this guy can't be the World Series MVP, and he does it. But I literally remember telling Scott, I was like, man, going back to that interview when they were both there, I was like, I wish you were a dick, man, because then it would give me a reason to root against you.
Yeah.
But he wasn't. He was like a guy's guy. And so sure enough, they signed him to a 3-year deal. And the Yankees, one thing they do not do, they will not call up a young guy who's not going to play. I didn't want to go back to AAA for a third year because now I was going to be 25. Now age is like, man, he's not a 23-year-old prospect. He's going to be 26 the next year if you're going back for your age 25 season. So literally that offseason, Brian Cashman calls me and he goes, I promise you your minor league career is over. I'm going to trade you to a team and you're going to play. Now, you don't know if he's just telling you something you want to hear or not. And February 1st, he trades me to the Marlins. I'm literally in a pre-spring training like camp where they invited a bunch of guys. I'm in my hotel room, and my roommate is Clay Bellinger, Cody Bellinger's dad. So to show you full circle, like I knew Cody when he was 4 years old going into our AAA locker room with a Fred Flintstone's bat, hitting wiffle balls. So I go way back with Cody Bellinger, and Cashman calls me. He's like, you've been traded to the Florida Marlins. I wanted to just jump up and down on the bed because for me, I felt no pressure playing at home. And that goes back to my dad, where my dad was always the type of guy who was like, you have to compete. You're going to respect the opponent, but we're there to win and bury him. Like this was not, my dad wasn't like, hey, let's all have fun. My dad was like, we're going to win. Respectfully, we're not going to show you up, but we're here to win. So I never felt that pressure to perform in front of my dad. For example, Mark Kotze was my teammate, and he was like, I don't know how you do it. He goes, I think I would be driven crazy if I played in my home, in LA, where he was from. So everything was very different. For me, it was a piece of cake. Every day, before some attorney changed the damn rules where they tax us on tickets, we could leave as many tickets. Now, you play for the Red Sox and the Yankees, they sell out. The Marlins, there was 1 million tickets. I literally would leave 8 tickets for my dad, 8 tickets for one of my best friends, and I just said, everyone, call them. I'm not dealing with anyone. And then they would leave them under whoever's name. I didn't care. 16 tickets every single game. My dad probably missed 5 games a year because there was a wedding or something because I don't know. I think he was figuring that I don't know how long my son's going to play in the same town where we're living. I want to see every game I could. So he would just go, please don't put me in the same row where 4 wives are just talking shit the whole time. I want to watch the game. I said, oh no, Dad, I can't control that. But it was cool to see. Like for me, it was great. My friends and my family had a front row ticket to my career. So from that standpoint, I loved it. Spring training was easy. I took 2 pairs of jeans and 4 underwears. It didn't matter. I could drive home, every 2 weeks if I wanted to, So it was a blessing for me because the other side was I knew you had a chance to play. You get traded to a team, you struggle for 2 weeks. They don't have time to let rookies, develop. They'll send you right back down, and then they play that cat and mouse game, which mentally doesn't work for everyone. So it was a good fit for me.
And what did you know about the organization you were going into other than it's the hometown team? Where were they in their, obviously we could talk about 03 and we'll get to that, but where were they then?
Well, they were in the middle of the sell-off, because they won in 97, and basically the whole 98 team were the Yankees. We played the Marlins a lot in, our AA division had the Marlins team. So I played in Portland against, it was Kevin Millar and Alex Gonzalez and all those guys I played against. So I knew the guys, but you also knew the talent level. I mean, it was basically a glorified AAA team in 98 playing against big leaguers. you know, and some guys got pushed. Why? Well, they sold off the whole World Series team. So I knew they were in a spot where, honestly, I viewed it as there was a lot of opportunity. Because at that point, when you're young in the league, do you want to win? Yes. Do you have goals of playing in the World Series? Yes. But you want to establish yourself, you know? And that's where I get back to, it's a little bit of a selfish concept it's a little bit of a selfish game within a team concept. So I felt like, hey, this is a pretty good opportunity for me and a lot of other guys to compete and win spots. And it ended up being kind of that way.
Those teams, right? The 99 to 2002 teams, right? They were a fun team to watch, right? And I think that 2001, 2002, there was a lot more potential for them to take the next step. Talk about how you guys, Penny, D. Alex Gonzalez, Castillo, right? Beckett, growing up together in that system, played a part in not only the camaraderie that you guys had in 03, but how much sweeter was it to see that kind of pay off when you reached the ultimate goal, you know?
Great point, because I tell people my most satisfying thing about the 03 championship was that Derek Lee, Luis Castillo, Alex Gonzalez, and myself were basically the same infield that got our asses kicked for 3 years. So it shows that you can develop and get better. And I think you look at that infield, and for me, the biggest travesty is that Alex Gonzalez never won a Gold Glove, because he was Gold Glove caliber every year. But it was 3 Gold Glove guys. I mean, I think the infield ended up being one of our major strengths. So that was a proud moment. But setting that up, I got to give credit to Dave Dombrowski, because in '99, Dombrowski has a meeting about 2 weeks before the season ends. He comes into the clubhouse and he goes, guys, there are a lot of spots here open. You know, when you're not a real good team, there's a lot of opportunity. I'm going to have a meeting with every single one of you guys and let you know what I think is going to happen next year. I'd rather be honest with you. And I was like, wow, you know, you don't get that all the time. So personally, I go in, and remember, this is my cancer season. I'm starting, you know, I hit about 12 home runs for the last 2.5 months, but I still don't know where I kind of fit. He starts having the meetings. I haven't had a meeting at all. Literally second to last day of the season, we're in Atlanta. He comes out, he goes, Mike, want to have our meeting? And I'm like, sure. And he goes, well, you know, with all your health stuff, you've kind of have an ace in your back pocket, but I'm going to let you know how I see things. He goes, you're going to be the starting third baseman next year. You're going to hit 5th. You have any questions? I said, nope. He goes, do you want to know about the other positions? I said, nope. And he goes, well, I'm going to tell you. He goes, we're going to trade Kevin Ory before spring training starts, because I don't want competition in case you get off to a slow start in spring training and he gets off to a good start. Luis Castillo is going to beat out Craig Counsell. Derek Lee's going to beat out Kevin Millar, but we're still going to keep Kevin. We like his bat. Like that. Check, check, check. Like he hit on, like his evaluation on that was spot on.
This is 99.
This is 99. So, you know, he was a visionary saying, hey, I see this nucleus of infield that I think we're going to work with. 99, at the end of 99, which would go into 2000. So for me, like I hold Dave Dombrowski. I have had great relationships with basically the 2 major GMs early in my career. Cashman told me he was going to trade me. He traded me. Dombrowski told me he was going to play me. He played me. So like and Dombrowski is still, you know, winning championships with the Phillies. So he's, for me, one of the greatest big league talent evaluators, knowing what fits for his team to work. And I think that's what it was. You know, then you get Josh coming up. You had Brad Penny coming up. We had AJ Burnett. And a lot of these guys were kind of in the same boat, because AJ, I think, was in like the Al Leiter trade. You know, Penny was, I don't know, Penny's traded someone with Arizona, because I know he was Arizona's pick. You know, everyone was coming from her. Preston Wilson was coming over from a trade too. So, you know, we started having guys that were all in the same boat. Really, our veterans were Alex Fernandez, who was coming off a major surgery, so no one was going to trade for him because he was making big dollars, and Cliff Floyd. Everyone else was give or take 2 years, you know, of either service time or age. And I think that kind of helped us, because we all kind of went through growing pains together. You pick each other up, and man, it's really cool to see when everything comes together. Now, some guys at different levels, like Beckett was a different beast. Like his first start, you just saw that his shit was different. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So
Did the curve feel into 2003, did it feel like sharp and all of a sudden, or did you guys feel like a gradual
A li-
progression?
I would say gradual, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think we won like the last 6 games of '02, and we were right around 500. So you're thinking, I mean, my God, dude, if we're basically 8, 9 games better, you're a wild card contending team. I think that was our thought process. Would it pan out? I don't know, because remember, in our division, the Braves were the monsters. I mean, like I tell people, you guys talk about divisions. By April 20th, we were 10 games out already because they were so good. So our focus was almost always the wild card because the Braves were just too stacked. Like, we knew very few teams could match up with their game plan for 162. I think they were the best team for 162 and really not a great team for 15, 14 wins in the postseason because you play the game.
162, one of the best ever.
Ever.
For like a
And
decade.
and a long run too. It wasn't like it was 6 years. Like, they did it for 15. Like, I remember in September they would clinch the division. They would all handshake. And we would say, my God, we clinched the division. We're going to bring the house down. We're going to champagne the shit out of their whole locker room so they got to all clean it up, you know? So it was just, that's how used to winning they were, you know? And it was so wild card was kind of our focus going into '03. Could we? We're like, man, if everything goes right, we could. You know, that was kind of our thought. Now, some good pieces fell into play.
So Big League Camp 2003 comes around. Do you feel a different vibe, or is it something that develops late, like at a certain point in the year where you feel like we got something?
A little bit of both. I think Pudge was huge. You know, we signed Pudge, and for me, the first day in spring training, like, I mean, he's just like casually throwing down to second. And I was like, bro, I've never seen this in my life. Like, his footwork, his arm, it was so ridiculous that, like, for me, I still think he goes down as the greatest catcher ever. Not in our era, it's every era. You know, I put him up against Johnny Bench and Yogi Berra and all. Like, he did everything. And what I loved about him the most was, I mean, a guy was leading off first base like 2 feet, and he's like looking at D-Lee like, I want to throw. Like, he never feared, like, the throw was never going wrong. Like, he had that type of confidence where he wants to throw, show off his arm, and for us, being young pitching staff, like, he literally shut down a running game. Like, reputation and execution, he shuts it down. So that was a component that was very different for us. So, I mean, you know, we had Torbor, we get off to a slow start, and I love Jeff Torbor. I think he's a great baseball guy. He was a very soothing, fatherly figure, and I don't think Loria wanted that. You know, it was like, hey, we want to win now. And when Jack comes in, I think his mentality is perfect, but a lot of stars align as well. I think Josh was on the DL with a blister, so we didn't have everyone. And all of a sudden, then Cabrera and Dontrell come, and we become a totally different team. That was a big. I think when they came up, we were like, I think we're as good as anyone. And in a short series, I think we can throw with anyone. And really, I mean, AJ blows out in April. So we were kind of looking for, we needed another starter because Pavano was solid, Beckett was the ace, Penny was good, and Mark Redmond was actually great for us because he was a lefty change of pace guy instead of 3 flamethrowers. Then you get this guy who has the funky outfit, you know, hat turned, leg kick all messed up, throwing 94 and great energy. Like, it was the first time that I really noticed that the stadium had guys that went to see one guy, which was cool, you know, when Dontrell started off. That was cool. So their first impressions were fantastic. And Cabrera's first impression was the best first impression I ever had in my life. Like, his first big league hit is a walk-off home run in pro player. He hits it 420. Like, I never hit a ball in batting practice that far. So I was like, this guy's first hit is better than anything I've ever done in 6 years of my career, you know? So he was just different. Like a 20-year-old, he had this plate awareness and understanding how guys were trying to set up, and then he could just hit the ball anywhere. Like, the way he could hit the ball to right field as a young guy, and then they try to come in and he pulls it. Like, he had no weaknesses at 20. I was like, holy shit, this guy's going to be unbelievable. And he ended up being unbelievable. It was great.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about when you first got to the Marlins, and right, like, there's a surplus of tickets. You can kind of give out as many tickets as you want. The stadium is not known for being, you know, packed versus what you saw in New York, right? Talk about those games, right, in the regular season. I think there was a game against the Diamondbacks late in the season where it was Dontrell versus Randy Johnson.
Okay, yeah.
And that was one of the first regular season games where you saw it, 40,000 people in the stadium. Talk about playing in front of, you're not just playing in front of your hometown, but you're playing in front of a packed stadium, right? And that element to that stadium where it's a football stadium that can hold up to 60,000
Yeah.
people, right? How much of an advantage did that give you guys? And when the train started rolling, the D train in this case, but you kind of saw the city getting behind the team.
I think it became a huge home field advantage that became very foreign to the visiting teams. Because when we went to New York or Boston, you knew the environment's hard. When teams came to Miami, we were always like, hopefully the South Beach 10th man kicks in, because the stadium was not an intimidating thing for a visiting team to come in. Right. I mean, when we would play the Mets and the Cubs in the break, we would hear "Let's go Mets," louder than "Let's go Fish," let's say. So I would say basically end of August is when kind of crowds started coming in. When you're used to playing in front of 7 to 9 and it turns into 27, 35, 40, man, there's a different buzz in the stadium. And any player tells you that it's the same is lying to you, because the energy's there. Like, you feel it. It's easier to play. Like, I don't know, you're more locked in. Not to say that guys don't prepare if they play in front of crowds that are small, but it's just different. When you got a lot of eyes on you, I think everything's magnified. That's why the playoffs are so good. So when we get to the playoffs, they opened up the whole second deck because they used to tarp sections of it. I mean, we had like 68,000 and everyone, and loud Cubans, and it became a real home field advantage. Like, it was different. It was an atmosphere. It was like, oh my God, this place gets really loud. So it kind of went from, wow, this team's pretty good, to now they're pretty good and this environment isn't the friendliest thing to play in. So I think it kind of snowballed in a positive way for us that year.
What do you think, if you could point to something that doesn't get talked about enough that was a contributing factor to that club? Like maybe like an unheralded, you hit the highlights of it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I would say we played a polished brand of baseball. And this is what I mean by that. I say my biggest regret of my career is that team had what I think every team, and now you're going 20 years back, strives for to attain, right? Young, cheap, dominating pitching. For us, Carl Pavon was the only one 2 years away from free agency. We had Beckett, we had Dontrell as a rookie, we had Penny, we had Pavano, and we had A.J. Burnett that was going to come back the next year. So, I mean, like, we had 4 possible years of guys still being cheap, relatively speaking, right? And I'm not saying we'd have won World Series, but you saw that those guys, those are the teams then that have great pitching year in, year out that get to the postseason. Now, whether you win in the postseason is different. The hottest team usually keeps advancing. But that's where I was like, I think that polished brand was, okay, so then you have great pitching, but what do you need to support it? Your defense has to be great, and it has to be great up the middle. Well, Pudge, check. Gonzalez Castillo, check. Juan Pierre, center, check. And I think 2 other facts. So I think our defense was a strength that nowadays it would have been heralded as great because you have all these ways to measure, defensive runs saved and all this stuff. There they were just saying, hey, they got good range, they turn cool double plays. That's kind of how it was. Great team speed. Like, Derek Lee stole 20-plus bases. Pudge stole bases. Castillo and Juan Pierre were a pain in the ass. And if you look at analytics today, Castillo and Juan Pierre would be considered below average major league players. They would not be as sought after as the guy that probably hits 240 and hits 28 home runs. But when I tell you the number of holes they create because they were stolen base threats, like, a computer can't quantify how many runs that equates to, but it does. And then I think the last thing was that we had guys that just knew how to drive in runs. I mean, Encarnacion, he drove in, I think, 92. And he was the odd man out when we went to, like, the National League game when we traded for Conine. And honestly, Conine gets traded because I broke my hand at the end of August. So, like, we had guys, you had Cabrera coming in, who basically was driving in 100 runs equivalent if he stayed all year. it was my career year. I missed a whole month, and I had career highs by, I think, the All-Star break in home runs. I had never hit so many home runs in my life. You know, and Derek Lee, you know, we had guys with 85, 97, 92, 105, and then with these guys setting the table, it was just, I was hitting fourth almost all year, basically, until I broke my hand. It was Pierre, Castillo, Pudge, me, Derek Lee. Then after that, I think it was a combination probably of Encarnacion. When Cabrera comes, I think he's probably fifth. Then when I break my hand, Cabrera goes to fourth, you know? And then when I came back for the playoffs, I was probably sixth or seventh, which is exactly where I should have been, because you take a month off, the minor league seasons are over. I didn't even have a rehab assignment. Like, my first at-bat was the last game of the season against the Giants, so I go get them. But I had to prove that I could be put on the playoff roster. That's a whole nother story. I think our lineup was deep. You know, even Alex Gonzalez, that usually hit eighth, he'll pop you 18, you know? So you can't just, you know, float a heater down, and because the pitcher, you know, now, you know, pitchers hit in the National League back then. So our lineup was deep. The defense was good. You had plus base running. You had dominating pitching. And then we traded for Uga Turbina as well. That was a phenomenal trade for us. Like, how much more of a complete team you want? You look at the Braves, and like, we were faster than the Braves. We defended better than the Braves. We can't say you pitched better than the Braves because they had 3 Hall of Famers. But like, when you're comparing yourself to them, they're like, how much better were they than us? And that's when I think that gap started shortening towards the end of the year. We're like, we have all the pieces. Whether they play out or not, we don't know, but we have all the pieces.
Okay, so in order to make a lot of teams are good on paper, right? But then you got to actually, in the postseason, show up. So obviously you are one of those people that did, but does anybody else stand out as, like, Beckett stands out to me as like a guy who, like, spotlights on, time to do the biggest thing, and then he did the thing. You know?
I think we had several guys, to be honest with you. Pudge in the Giants series, I mean, hits a walk-off, hits home runs. They don't give a division series MVP because it's just early in the rounds, but he was unbelievable. Cabrera was unbelievable. I'm with you. I tell people, if you put what Beckett did in 03 in today's terms, people wouldn't believe it, because what guys don't understand is he loses to, I think, Jason Schmidt in game 1, and he gives up 1 earned or something in 7 innings. So he lost, right? He gets pounded for about 3 innings in game 1 of the Cubs series. We're down 3-1. He has to show up for game 5. He throws a 3-hit shutout, pitches a 3-hit shutout. He throws 4 innings on 2 days rest in game 7 in Wrigley. Like, people forget, 4 innings, 2 days rest, lights out. Loses to Mussina in game 2, I think, of the World Series, or game 3, but pitched great. And then 3 days rest, pitches a complete game 2. Like, I mean, he dominated the Yankees, he dominated the Cubs, he dominated the Giants. Like, what else do you want the guy to do? So, like, that just locking in narrow focus was huge. But, you know, if I pick one moment, I think Carl Pavano came in and was bases loaded against Barry Bonds in game 2. And back then, by the way, Barry Bonds was playing a different level of baseball. And it was like, okay, this is either going to be 4 runs or 1 run if we're lucky, if we walk them. And I think he gets them to pop out, and it kept us in the game. And the crazy part about that run is not only do we get out of that, but the way I always say someone's got to do a major documentary on the way the games were won. Because game 2 in San Fran, Jose Cruz Jr., who won the Gold Glove, drops a pop-up. Like, he drops a pop-up. But now, you can drop a pop-up, but you got to capitalize, right? Everyone talks about Bartman. Bartman was a foul ball. Like, Luis Castillo still had to get on base. Things had to happen. Now, Alex Gonzalez makes a big error, but they were still up. Derek Lee gets a huge hit, Pudge gets a huge, then of all people, Mike Mordecai comes and clears the base. You know, so the way we won, the collision with JT Snow and Pudge was like, I didn't even think we had a chance to breathe. You know, like, I look back, and when I look at the 07 playoffs, I remember before the 7 playoffs with my wife, I said, I'm going to try to take in, I go, because I don't remember shit about 03. Because the games were just like, all right, they dropped, okay, 1-1, we got to go back home. All right, we're up 2-1. All right, the Cubs, this and that. Oh, we're down 3-1. I mean, what people don't realize when we're down 3-1 is we literally had to pack a suitcase to say, you're going to win game 5 at home. We take off day Chicago. win Game 6 in Chicago, win Game 7 in Chicago, off day to see which American League park you're going, Game 1 of the American League park. You had to pack for 7 days, and we're down 3-1. I'm basically telling you, a lot of guys didn't pack with a lot of enthusiasm. That's a tough, but that's kind of, those are the little things where, am I packing for 7 days or am I packing for 3 hours? You know, so that run was just, you know, the way games were. And then Yankee game for me, you know, I played in one game in the Giants series, and my hand just, it wasn't there. And then as I got 3-4 more days, I still remember batting practice in Chicago was the first time before Game 1 where my hand felt good. And that's when, once again, the gods align everything. We used every pinch hitter known to mankind, and I was the last guy up there, and Jack goes, let's see if you can do something. It was the 12th inning. I hit 99% of my home runs were left field. I didn't have that pop to go right center, right field. And I hit one dead center. I don't know. It was meant to be, you know.
Was that your first pinch hit homer?
I don't know if it was my first pinch hit homer. I actually think I hit a pinch hit homer my rookie year. But like, you're just trying to start a rally, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not thinking that. Let's get on base, you know, let's see what you can do. And for me, I was just like, I just want to have a good at bat so Jack can think I can play, because I wasn't even playing. And luckily after that, I don't think I sat after that. So that's a good. Yeah, I actually don't think I started Game 2, but we got blown out, and I think I had 2 at bats, and I had a couple good at bats, and then I didn't sit after that. I know after Game 2, Chicago, I didn't sit. But yeah, I mean, in every playoff run, I think there's a moment where you're like, oh, we dodged a bullet. We capitalized here. Look how good we did here. Like anything, you know, you got to have a little bit of fate on your side, a little bit of luck, but a lot of talent too.
Let me play you a quick clip. We're gonna go through the at bat, which is fast forward to Game 5, right?
Okay.
Versus Zambrano, I think.
I love it. Great at bat.
Since 1987, only one time has a team trailed in the LCS 3-1 and come back to win the series. That is the Atlanta Braves in 1996. And the Marlins, they have broken through. They have broken through. 2-run home run.
That ball was crushed. I don't know if I can do that anymore. Look at the stands.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
That's not an atmosphere that you see too often in baseball, no matter where you're playing, you know?
No, not at all. I got that from Paul O'Neill. Paul O'Neill was the one guy, when I get called up, they clinched the division. So rookies had no say at all. This is back in the day where you hit last, you got 5 swings compared to someone else that gets, you know, they're 40. So I said, man, I got to go to the cage really early, like before everyone, 1 o'clock, so that I can at least, in case, you know, they were doing like spring training. They were up in the 7th, bro, just come out, Mike, you get an at-bat, play 2 innings of defense, make sure no one gets hurt for the postseason. Paul O'Neill was in there early every single day, even after they finished. And I mean, and he was a red ass. He'd hit 3 line drive base hits. He'd line out and fire his helmet, you know, and I was like, this guy is intense. And every time he hit a ball that he knew he hit out, he would just put his head down. And I was like, bro, I think that's better than pimping, you know, today, you know, there's a lot of song and dance, which I'm okay with, you know, the individuality I'm not. But I'm like, if you just put your head down and run, that pitcher knows that you got him, because I'm not even bothering to look at it. And that was one of the times where, you know, Zambrano was nasty. I'm not going to lie. Like, he was sinker in hard, cutters away, slider, cutter. So, I mean, my philosophy hitting was really simple. I didn't strike out a lot, so I didn't fear the strikeout. I looked middle in till I got 2 strikes. I go, because that's my strength. And, you know, in today's game's the same. Every hitter could probably sit in on the pitcher's meeting and know what they're going to do to you. I know what they want to do to me, but they're not robots. So I can't look for the bastard slider, because no one hits the bastard slider. I got to be ready for the mistake. And here this was that. You know, it was a backup slider. Got, you know, inner third, which for me was my strength. So I knew when I hit it, I got it. And, you know, you put your head down and look over. But that's a good feeling when you got 60,000 people yelling because you did something. You know, I try to describe that, and I don't know if I can put that into words.
So talk about the atmosphere going into New York. And if you want, just talk about it going into Chicago too. It's a hostile atmosphere, right? Is there any story you can tell us about maybe a bus ride getting into the stadium, or maybe even in Chicago as things started turning for the worst versus in the beginning? I was thinking about that, and I came across a video of like you and Mike Redmond like walking from a hotel, kind of just signing autographs and like
In Chicago?
Yeah.
Well, Chicago, like the people of the city, Midwestern kindness. You know, they were great. Game one was one of the few times I was scared after a game. When we won in game one, you know, you get 2-3 buses that are taking the team back. And usually it's in a spot where, you know, it's the players' lot. People can't get in there. Remember, Wrigley's an old stadium, so you're literally right out on the street. And there was not enough security. And after game one, we're getting bottles thrown at the bus and everything. I remember our hitting coach, Bill Robinson, rest in peace. He was like, we got to call the police. Someone needs to call 911. You know, and it was as intimidating as I've ever been, as intimidated as I've ever been in a bus. I mean, it was bottles and everything. I'm sure half the people were hammered there, you know, and they're upset because they lost game one. But going into, like, we thought, you know, the Cubs hadn't gone to the World Series in, I don't know, 90 years. So when we win game 7, we had to spend the day in Chicago because we didn't know where we were going because the American League was hosting game 1 when it was the Yankees or the Red Sox. And we were like, man, they're going to hate us. I said, well, I don't care. We're going to walk down Michigan Avenue. I'm going to drink beer to celebrate lunch. And we're going to, and I said, because we knew we were going to get a World Series losing share at worst, which is good money. I said, I'm going to go to the first 10 stores I see. I'm going to buy one thing from each store. Whatever. It was like Sunglass Hut or something like that. It wasn't, you know, it's not like it was Gucci and Versace and all that. And dude, all the fans there were like, hey, what a great series. Good luck in the World Series. And I was like, what? I go, this doesn't fly in certain cities, you know? So I was kind of taken aback by the kindness of the Chicago fans after you literally broke their hearts. But I do remember in that series, in game 7, Miguel Cabrera hits a home run early. Kerry Wood's on the mound. And Kerry Wood, of all people, hits a home run, I think, to tie the game or to put them up. I'm not sure. The Cubs had like 8,000 fans out on the street, you know, because they have all the pubs there. It's a great atmosphere, but with the playoffs, it was even more. And I remember just looking up and the lights on the top of the stadium were shaking. And I was like, bro, I've never felt a stadium shake like this in my life. I was like, you're going to tell me we're going to come back from 3-1 the way we've won the whole Bartman game the day before and lose in game 7? So, you know, those are the thoughts, you know, that go through your mind, you know, like, you know, even the Bartman thing, we weren't really knowing what's going on. We just knew there was a cop in our dugout and a camera guy. And Mark Redmond, the pitcher, not Mike Redmond, was like, after the air, he goes, let's make him famous. Let's make him famous. Kind of like make him pay for it. And the cop goes, hey, guys, I got to go. Hang tight. And we're like, what? He goes, they're crushing this guy. They're throwing stuff at him. They got to escort him off the field. And like, we had no idea what was going on. But till after, you know, you see, you know, Sports Center and Baseball Tonight and everything going on. And it was like, oh my God, this guy got crucified. And you realize he was just a guy who was a lifelong Cubs fan who basically everyone in that seat would have tried to get the ball that was going there. So, yeah, there were moments that you felt unsafe, kindness moments. And then after we win game 7, we go to New York. And I actually think there was 2 days off. One we spent in Chicago, and then one for, you know, I guess the workout. So we went out to eat, whatever. We're like, man, they're going to spit in our food and all this. And the first waiter at whatever restaurant we're at, we're like, hey, good luck, guys. We're like, you want us to win? He's like, man, I'm a Mets fan. All my Yankee buddies keep ragging on me because they have so many championships. You guys got to win. I was like, man, this is pretty cool, you know? So it was good. It was, you know, we felt like, let's take our game to the Yankees, which I think we did on the first at-bat.
So game 1, there's a specific play that we've all seen where the pickoff at third base with Nick Johnson. Talk about how that developed. Is that something that you had kind of built a chemistry with throughout the season with Pudge? And tell me what was going through your mind.
Well, going back, I think Rob Thompson's the third base coach, or maybe Larry Boa. They were both on the staff. I don't know if they swapped duties, Pudge always wanted to throw. And I said, Pudge, if we got a big shift, Giambi, Matsui, those are the guys that kind of ring a bell. I'm playing way off, 5-6 hole. I go, if they're getting way off, I go, you got to call pitch inside if we're going to throw. So if he puts it in play, I can't have a lefty hit it where I'm supposed to be because I go, but I'm going before the pitch is thrown. I go, this is the sign. Because the third base coach is always looking at the third baseman to see if he's doing something. I go, this is the sign. Because he looks over every time. He's looking over. He's looking at Delia first. I told him, I go, hey, it was literally don't throw. And that's when it was on. So, dude, it worked out perfect. Penny throws the pitch. I mean, Pudge, it's an absolute strike. And it's like Willie Mays Hayes, where the guy, Nick Johnson, he doesn't even get to the base. And sure enough, I think Matsui was hitting. Was it Matsui? Yep. He leads off the next inning with a base hit. So, like, we won by 1 run. Like, that play with Pudge was a game changer, But
what stands out to me is tie game, the third inning, obviously, like, the house is packed. And, like, it's first and third. You put that ball in left field. Like,
it's a low percentage play. It's not a great play.
You getting there.
100%. And that's honestly, that's the faith I had in Pudge and he had in himself. First thing is, you might have Pudge want to throw. The third base is like, no, I don't want to get there late. Or me, I don't want you to throw because I'm not going to do that play with every catcher in the league. Like that ball goes into left field. Now you're an idiot because you were 1 out away from getting out of the jam. So but I think that was our mentality. Like I go back to the first at bat. We had our advanced scout meeting before that game, and David Wells, who ends up being one of my teammates, awesome. For being a big guy, he was a great athlete. He got off the mound great. So the scouting report was there was 0 bunt base hits off David Wells during the season. So literally, Louis and Juan Pierre, the advice is for you guys not to bunt on this guy. Second pitch of the game, Juan Pierre bunt base hit. Because first of all, we had the advantage of we had nothing to lose. No one expected us to be there. But second off, if we're going to go down, we're going down playing our way. And Juan Pierre bunted, and he tried to steal almost every time he got on base. So that first inning, bump base hit. Louis hits a flare to right. Juan Pierre goes to third. I think he actually might have stolen second. Pudge sack fly, 1-0. You know what I mean? So like that was kind of like, hey, if we're going down, let's go down playing our game. And we had a collective kind of attitude like that. So those little plays, that Pudge play is I think it goes down once again. We're not a big market team, but you look at the plays guys did in the way we won. If this is a Chicago or LA, I think they're making different kind of stories about the playoff run.
So much can go wrong in that moment. Like you can make a perfect throw and hit the shoulder, hit the helmet. Like your window to make the tag is tiny.
Yep.
And the timing, I think it's exactly what you said, right? Like big things, big moments like that have to happen in order for the way for it to go that way.
And I think you need to have the leeway. Perry Hill, who's actually still the infield guy with the Mariners, he, bunt plays with pitchers. He'd like, Mike, if you want to do the wheel it. Jack McKeon was like, you guys want to pick off 12 times, pick off. He goes, I don't want them stealing. Slide step, Pudge, you want to call pit. Like they kind of gave us, for being young guys, I think they understood that we understood the game. So we had a lot of leeway on doing stuff ourselves. But I think that's a learned behavior because we did it, you called it, it worked out. Like, we're not just being reckless. So I think that was part of, we knew we were going to have the blessing there. You're still hoping nothing goes wrong. But when it goes right, everything's got to work. Everything's got to work, So, those are things that kind of put you in that spot to win a championship.
So you mentioned a little bit, and we see the video of when Beckett tags Posada, and you kind of look up at the sky and say something. I think you try to read your lips. You said, we fucking did it, or something like that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that the first thing you thought of, you looked up, like, what went the first thing that went through your mind? And also, it had to be sweet doing it against the Yankees, obviously.
Yeah, I played that down a lot, because I didn't want bulletin board material, like, once again, you learn from the Hurricanes. They don't talk smack because, remember, the Hurricanes was the highlight of my childhood. So, but it was 100% I don't know, like a, not sweet revenge because they didn't treat me bad, but kind of look what you missed out on. Because I don't think anyone tries to trade you hoping you do better to haunt them, you know, later in a later year. So that was very gratifying personally, because you're part of the team that kind of beat a team who was in the middle of a monster dynasty type run. When it comes to, yeah, I mentioned it was my grandmother, because when I signed in '95, my grandmother was going through cancer, and then when I leave, I remember my dad, you know, telling me, "Dale un buen abrazo, it might be the last time," and I was like, "It's not gonna be the last time," you know. You think, and sure enough, she passes away August 1st. So, and she always told me when I left to sign to go to Tampa, she was like, "Mikey, on all the teams you're on," hold on a second. She goes, "It seems like they do better when you're a part of them." So you like to think that when I went to Gables, you win a district championship for the first time in 30 years. Is she onto something, you know? You go to FIU, we do the regionals, which we never went to. Did you have a little part to doing something? And then, you know, my career year with the Marlins, and, you know, once again, how disappointing would it be to get to the World Series and now win the World Series, you know? So that was part one. And part two is you're nervous, you know? I think it was 2-0, you know? Like, one guy gets on, a bloop in the blast, and the you know, the whole world changes. And for us, we're really, Jack McKeon would have been crucified in today's game, is why would you throw your ace on 3 days rest when they're throwing their ace in Pettit, when you got game 7 with a guy on full rest and you still have other guys that would have been on full rest? So that's the move by McKeon that, and mind you, I love Jack. I think he understood personalities good. From an X's and O's standpoint, it was all hunch. You know, every manager has the book where it's matchups, you know, the bullpen guys. Hey, this guy has 20 at-bats against Urbina and Looper and all these guys. That book never even made it out of the office. It never made to the dugout. Like, he didn't care about that, you know? Oh, lefties, warm up the lefty. Which one? He's like, get me a lefty, you know? So he went with a hunch. And on top of that, his hunches turned out pretty good. So you're a little nervous, and then, like, the part I really struggle to put into words is, like, when you're a group of guys, and I always think the coolest thing about my profession is Mike Redmond's one of my best friends in baseball, best friends in life that I obviously met in baseball. He played Little League in Spokane, Washington. I played Little League in Miami, Florida. How the fuck did we come together? Luis Castillo came in through the Dominican. Alex Gonzalez through Venezuela. Derek Lee is California. You know what I mean? Like, so it's all these parts come together, and you have a goal. Everyone's goal is to win the World Series that year. There's only one that does. To kind of together reach that pinnacle, like, I can't compare it to anything else. You know, I don't know what to compare it to. Like, you could say I'm as excited as when my kids were born, but it's very different because there was 24 other guys you did this with. My kid was born with me and my wife, hopefully, right? You know, so, like, it's a very different elation, and I think you appreciate the hard work that your teammates put in. You appreciate the grind that the scouts and your managers and your hitting coaches put in, because that hitting coach is flipping 700 balls a day. And when you're done, you go play, he picks up 700 balls. And tomorrow we're ready to do it again. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of behind the scenes. So all that is just so rewarding that you feel like this is the greatest moment in the world, because it affects so many people in a good way. And then you come home, and I think arguably we had one of the best parades that any team has had, because Gloria made a 45-minute reservation. We were just going to go down Coyote and come right back. That thing took like 4.5 hours, dude. So it was, you know, that was great, because then I felt like this was where I grew up. Right. You know what I mean? We went down the streets where I grew up. We went right in front of Versailles. That's where I would go on Sunday. You know what I mean? So It was a culmination of cool things for me personally, because the whole Yankee thing, playing against the team that you came up with, winning a championship. I mean, besides Alex Fernandez, no one grew up in Miami that was on that team. You know, it doesn't take it away, but it makes it a little sweeter. You know, to be like that, the local kid kind of did good.
Yeah, I mean, and from the fan perspective, like a championship, and that championship specifically for me, you know, like it touches so many people. Like how many dads were with their kids in that stadium that you saw, like that Game 5 home run, like that moment goes so far for so many people, you know. And if that doesn't happen, we're not sitting here today, you know. And a championship is something that's so special. And maybe we're a little bit, you know, spoiled in Miami sports fans, right?
Sure.
But it's something that has generational impact, you know.
Yeah, and I think not only for Miami, it does for several cities, but I think baseball, and especially Latin families, they revolve around baseball, and a lot of the conversations are about baseball. So when your local team's doing good, and we also had a nice mix of Latin players where, you know, Cabrera, Urbina, Alex Gonzalez, 3 Venezuelans, you know. There was a pretty heavy contingency of Venezuelans in Miami at that time. You know, we had, you know, Dominicans, Encarnacion Castillo, Puerto Ricans, Pudge. You know, me, I'm half born in Puerto Rico, Cuban family. You know, like you felt kind of that whole thing, and nothing to take away from any American fans, but the Latin fans, just go to the WBC games. There's a different flavor, you know. There's a different spice, you know. There's a different adobo that they throw in there, you know. So I think all that kind of lends to you as a kid remembering it. I think the thing that I get where I feel like my age now is when I get people walking with their wife and 2 kids. They're like, when I was 8 years old, my dad took me to a game. And I'm like, dude, you make me feel like but I look back, I've been retired 15 years. I played 5 years with the Red Sox. This kid could be 34. And yeah, he was probably 8 years old in 2002, you know? So you got to swallow it. You got to wear it every once in a while. But yeah, I think it does have different impacts. I remember when the University of Miami football team won the national championship, you know? I'm still waiting for the Dolphin one, but you know, I wasn't, you know, I wasn't there in '72. I was still too young, but so yeah, it does matter. It does, and I think it matters in a good way. It really does.
So I spent 6 years as a part of Red Sox Nation.
Really?
So I kind of have to ask about this
Sure.
chapter in your career, because you go over there and obviously like you fall into another. I don't want to call that. I mean, I guess you could call that the middle of their dynasty, if you put that term on that. What was that transition like? So are you disappointed now that you've been traded at this point from your hometown?
Not really, because after '03, Derek Lee and Pudge go. After '04, Pavano's gone. Management basically told us in '05, they tried to trade me and A.J. Burnett, I remember, to the Orioles. So players aren't dumb, man. We saw the writing on the wall. So we knew the offseason of '05, they told us a lot of guys are going to get moved. So I didn't want to go through another rebuilding process, you know? And that's where I sympathize with a lot of players, where you think you're going to play forever, but I've already got 7 in me. Am I really going to play for 20? I don't know, you know? So when I got traded, a part of it I was happy because I felt like Boston was a great baseball town, number one. I felt like it was a good park for me specifically to hit in as a pull hitter. You got that wall that's close. And I was going with one of my buddies, with Josh. You know, so I actually viewed it as sometimes a change of pace and a change of scenery is okay. You know, we weren't going to win. And going from as good as we were in '03 to, I think injuries kind of hurt us in '04. '05, I had basically the 1 year where I could say it was my terrible year. And then they just kept chipping away at the pieces that were part of your team. We weren't the same team. We were a different team. So, you know, they told me Luis Castillo's going to get traded. I said, man, Dele's gone, Castillo's gone. It seems like Gonzalez is gone. The infield's gone. You know, like it wasn't the 03. It was never going to be that '03 team. So I didn't mind it. There was a whole different kind of pressure coming off, you know, let's say a subpar season for the numbers that I had put up. So honestly, I kind of felt like I was a minor leaguer again. It was the first time that I started hitting. I usually start hitting right after New Year's. You know, I give myself 2 weeks off, and then I start working out, throwing program in December, like it's scripted. and I start hitting in January. I go 6 weeks of hitting before 6 weeks of spring training. That's more than enough time. I was hitting in November because I was like, the minute I got traded, it was right around Thanksgiving. I said, you got to prove yourself because, it's human nature. You read all the things. His bat speed's lower. Is this decline of his career? So you're kind of motivated to prove people wrong. And Curt Schilling was the first guy when I got to the Red Sox clubhouse, and he was like, he goes, you're going to do fine here, but just remember, we win, New England sleeps well. We lose, New England doesn't sleep well. And I was like, New England? He's like, yep, it's every damn state in New England. So it was a different kind of pressure, but honestly, it ended up being one of the 5 of the most enjoyable, I would say 3 of the most enjoyable. After I blasted my hip and had hip surgery, I wouldn't say baseball was as enjoyable, but that atmosphere, remember, we're coming from, man, we're a pretty good team and we're not drawing. One of our big things with the Marlins was in 2003, I remember we went to Cincinnati like in May or something, and the Reds were not doing well. It was like a Tuesday night. They had like 27,000. I'm like, why are we drawing 9 and 12 in the middle of the week when we're so much better? So we were, I guess the right word was we were a little jealous that we didn't play in front of a lot of fans. When their fans, when we would go on the road on teams that were much worse than us and playing a brand of baseball that wasn't as exciting as ours. So I get to Boston. I mean, I think our 3rd home game was against the Royals. It's one of those 35-degree days where it's not snowing, but it's miserable. Like the last thing you want to do is play baseball. And there's not an empty seat. Like my 5 years there, it was 400 sellouts. That's a pretty cool feeling to have, So I felt like I kind of went from an attendance standpoint. You kind of went from the basement to the penthouse, you know what I mean? Because they just lived and breathed. And that whole New York thing that I mentioned earlier, half that city likes the Mets. Like there's no mistaking in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. Like it's Red Sox and we love the Red Sox and we live and die with you. So that was a different kind of perspective on, the city and the tradition, which was, I embraced it. I liked it, and it worked out for me pretty well.
So 2007 comes around. You have your highest, at least from a run producing production. What do you attribute that spike to? I mean, that lineup was pretty good, but you've hit good lineups before.
Yeah, couple things. I mean, I was the perfect lesser of all the evils because that year, I tell David Ortiz, he probably made me more money than anyone because in 2006, he hits 55 home runs. In 2007, he hits like 58 doubles. Now, mind you, Fenway Park, runner on first. He hits a double off the wall. That guy can't score. Runner on second and third. Manny Ramirez comes up. You want to face Manny Ramirez or you want to face Mike Lowell? I want to face Mike Lowell 10 out of 10 times. Like, I know my role. I put Manny and Cabrera. I throw Albert Pujols in there. Like, those are the best hitters, right-handed hitters I've ever seen. So I hit in a lot of real good situations where they had to come to me. Now, mind you, the blessing was I just felt like that year I had a really good rapport with Dave Magadan, who was our hitting guy from spring training on. And I just felt like I came into my own on my preparation and understanding what I could do with pitches away and what I could do with pitches that I could do damage with. And I just felt it was one of those years that I was just consistent for 6 months. Every year you have this. Some years, like I had this that year, and it was always trending up. And it was a little bit like the Marlins season because Juan Pierre, Castillo, and Pudge were on-base machines. Now go Pedroia, Youkilis, Ortiz, and Ramirez. Like, I mean, by default, I should have driven in 90 with my eyes closed. And that year, I think I drove in 120,
Well, so you're giving a lot of credit away from yourself there, which I appreciate. But so the end of that season ends, you guys win the World Series.
Yep.
But you're the World Series MVP. And I don't think people realize what it is for like a position player to win a World Series MVP if you don't like win 2 games and
Yep.
that run you went on. I wonder, is that like you performing like what people call in the ultimate like zone? Is that what and it happens to be in the World Series?
I think you'd say a little bit of that. The way I view the World Series MVP is, when you're playing wiffle ball and you say, game 7, you're down by 3 and all that, and whether you hit a grand slam or not, like you never put yourself in the scenario as, I won the World Series MVP. It's always you might have hit the home run, you might have done this. That is not the thought process ever. But once again, I always go back to I feel like I'm running away from disappointment is what I think I was. when I got my cancer diagnosis, I remember my focus was, I don't want to be labeled as the guy that could have played, but he didn't because he had cancer. I didn't want that to be the reason. When I get traded, I didn't want to be the guy to, I didn't want the Yankees to think that, hey, we got away with one. I wanted to prove them wrong. Even when I got to Gables, I wanted to prove to the Columbus coach wrong. So I was always chasing that. And then in that season, I said, it would be such a disappointment. Kind of low 3. You get to the World Series. What a disappointment that you get to the World Series and lose. I go, I drove in 120 runs. What a disappointment it would be if I can't show up in the World Series. So I'm going day by day, but it's like intense because I don't want the failure to come. And I think that's part of what motivated me my whole career. But when you look back and you say, when the lights were the brightest and the games meant the most, that you played your best, I think it's more than icing on the cake. When we win, the Major League Baseball representative goes, Mike, you've been named. And I knew I was in the running because, you're having a good thing. I thought Beckett was going to get it, to be honest with you, because he shoved. I thought it was going to be more a cumulative award because he was dominant in Game 1 against the Angels, 1 and 5 against and he dominated in the World Series. So I was like, I think Beckett's going to get it. When they told me, Mike, you're the World Series MVP, I was just like, that's great. I didn't know how to react because it was never in my thought process. I was like, we got to win, we got to win. And those 2 world championships are so cool and so different for different reasons. No one expected us even to get to the playoffs with the Marlins, right? So there's an extreme satisfaction of proving someone wrong each level. Not only did we get to the playoffs, we beat the Giants, who went to the World Series the year before. We beat the Cubs when we were down 3-1 and ended 90 years of hope. And then we went into New York and shoved it up their ass. That's a really good feeling as a competitor. In Boston, our team was the best team basically start to finish. And anything but a World Series is disappointing. So when the expectations are so high that if you don't win a World Series, that's a failed season, and you still answer the bell there, that's very rewarding in its own way, So from a team standpoint, it was awesome. And from a personal standpoint, it's kind of like that culmination +1. Everyone comes together, you have a goal, you achieve the goal. I can't say ever my goal was to win a World Series MVP. I had goals. I would love to make an All-Star team. I would love to drive in 100 runs. That was never a goal. But it was one that I think I enjoyed it more than any other trophy I've gotten because there's only 100 of them. You know what I mean? So that hangs very proudly in my house. So right next to the World Series ring that I don't wear because it's too big.
2003 Marlins, 2007 Red Sox in a 7-game World Series.
Well, Beckett would have to pitch against himself, so that would neutralize things. The Red Sox offense was better. The Red Sox offense was better for sure. The bullpen was better. I think in its prime, the starting pitching of the Marlins might have been a little better. I don't know if that's enough in a 7-game. That's great for thought. You got 03 Beckett. We had Schilling. We didn't know that John Lester was going to be as good as he was. He was our Game 4 starter. He was a baby. He had Daisuke, who was actually great for us. So
Who was more electric, 03 Beckett or 07 Beckett?
07 Beckett was more dominant because they just had no chance. I just think he knew what he had to do and he executed. It almost was like your buddy who's a scratch golfer and he plays boring golf. He hits the ball in the fairway, puts it on the green, he 2-putts, and he shoots a 72. That was Beckett. I'm going to throw 7 innings, you're going to get 3 hits, you're going to get a run, we're going to win. 03 Beckett was, God, I hope this young guy can step up in Game 5 against the Cubs. Oh my God, he's dominating. 3 days rest, come on, Josh, what's your pitch limit? I go back to that. You think in the 8th inning, I don't know, let's look at a Baseball Reference. How many pitches he had after the 8th inning? 105. You think we were going to take him out? It could have been 155, they're not taking him out. You know what I mean? So
It would never happen now.
No chance. No chance. And I think in the 7th inning, the agent might have been calling down, you got to pull him, you got to pull him, you got to pull him, in that sense, it's a little bit of a different game. But I think we enjoyed 03 Beckett a little bit more because it was this guy who had a lot of hype. He had all those blister issues, and we just didn't know what's going to happen. Can he step up? Can he be the guy that basically you drafted and thought he was going to be the next Nolan Ryan? And for those 2 weeks in both of those years, he was. It was awesome. It was something where when he's on, I mean, you look at clips and see how Matsui swings, how Jeter buckles on curveballs away. Like, those are the things I remember. Like, that is nasty shit when you get Hall of Fame type hitters and they have no chance. Like, they make you look like you're a high schooler.
The highlights from that game in 03, the World Series game, when you actually, I watch a lot of baseball video, right? And like when you look at the dominance of that versus that lineup, it just kind of boggles the brain.
I mean, Bernie Williams striking out, swinging late, like those guys they're not overmatched ever, you know? Maybe if you're a lefty, Randy Johnson makes you look nasty. All right, he makes everyone look nasty. But a righty making lefties look nasty, that's another world. That's another world of dominance that he had. And I was glad I didn't have to face him at that time.
Last question for me. You know, did you know when you were approaching retirement that like did it come quick? Did it come slow? Was it a tough, quick pull of the Band-Aid or a long one?
It was, from knowing, it was easy, I would say. It wasn't tough leaving the game, but it was easy because at the end of 08, when I had my hip surgery, 09 comes and they told me your cartilage was all jammed up. He goes, but bad cartilage is still cartilage. There's still a buffer. He goes, we got to clean it all out. I tore my labrum and I tore, a part of my groin. And the doc comes in and he goes, by the way, your hip is eaten up. The downside to that is you're going to get bone on bone fast. You know, he said, the nature, you're torquing and twisting 500 times a day with every throw and every swing. You fast forwarded acute, arthritis 40 years. So 09, I was just in so much pain that I was like, I didn't feel like I had the pop. This is your driving power leg. And it just got worse and worse and worse. So when 2010 comes around, it was the last year of my deal. And that's the only part, because even my last game, Pettit's on the mound, and I go 2 for 2, and I hit a double and I hit a rocket off the wall. Like, I felt like, even as physically beat up that I was, I felt like my swing was good and I was honed in. Like, those last 4 years, like, I felt like my swing was honed in. So from a hitting standpoint, I felt like I could play 3-4 more years. In 2010, we signed Adrian Beltre, who was fantastic. And I went to the training room, and it would take me 2 hours, hot tub, this, massage, stretch, to get ready for batting practice. And I was like, this is ridiculous, man. I just can't do it. I feel like I have 60% of what I normally play with, and I wasn't happy, honestly. I wasn't happy because being on the bench, I admire utility guys more than anything. First of all, I was bored. I don't know. Maybe I got ADD after 35, And I was just so bored. I wasn't enjoying baseball. It took me so much to get ready to hit batting practice to then not hit it well. I mean, man, this was my 13th year. I know in BP when I get one, and I got it, and it's like, boom, hits the base of the wall. And I was like, I got nothing left. So from that standpoint, I knew it was time because I didn't have what I was normally having, And I still got a couple calls, and I said it in spring training, I'm retiring. And they were like, no, a couple guys were like, Mike, you're going to regret this, all this. And I was just in so much pain. And that year, I had my first cortisone shot in my hip. For 10 weeks, I felt like $1 million. And I was like, man, maybe I regret this decision. Then the pain came back. My second cortisone shot gave me like 2 weeks. My fourth cortisone shot gave me like 24 hours of relief. And I was like, I'm miserable. I can't do it. So I think it worked out, man. Like I say, the things aligned for a reason. My son was starting kindergarten, my daughter 3rd grade. I feel like I was there for a lot of the good years. I'm looking now, my son's a sophomore at Clemson and my daughter just graduated from college. And so I was there a lot of good years. So that trade-off's pretty good. I leave my career with 0 regrets. I feel like I was prepared, and what I feel like I can hang my hat on in my career was I know every day I gave 100%. It might have been 0 for 4 with an error, but that I gave you the best of my day. And that part was, I think if you look in the mirror, I feel like I did it at the right way, you know. And honestly, my biggest temptation during that whole time was, you know, I played in the steroid era. You know, you saw, it's not position, man. You saw pitchers come back, and I would always say to myself, man, if I gained 25 pounds of muscle, what type of numbers could I put up? And I would go back and be like, I got to look at myself in the mirror. Can't do that. I can't. So that's where it goes.
Cool.
I tried to be long-winded. I hope that's good.